Hey y'all. So I came across this quote and it says, "You are being presented with two choices: evolve or repeat." At the top of this season of the Becoming Unique podcast, I make an announcement saying that this season's theme is evolution. I strongly believe we are in the season of evolving. And I know for myself, I spent way too many seasons on repeat, and I am truly ready to evolve. Within this season, there has been a lot of conversation around mindset. Mindset is so crucial and important for the evolution of you. Let's get started with today's episode. Let's go. Today on the Becoming Unique podcast, I have such an amazing guest by the name of Tracy. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here.
And I am so glad that you are here with us. So you got to start it off with letting everyone know, who is Tracy?
Well, I'm Tracy Herbert. I'm a mother and a grandmother. Woohoo! Grandmas are great. Let me tell you, it's fun having grandkids. And I have the belief that as you age, you can actually have more energy, because in my 60s, I have more energy than I had in my 30s. And that's so important as we age. And no matter what your diagnosis, what your age is, or your outcome, you can live life to the fullest. And that's what I'm all about.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love your enthusiasm and your energy. Yes, you're gonna get this party started today.
There's never a dull moment when Tracy's involved, let me tell you.
Yeah, you did tell me that your birthday's in August and you're a fire sign. So fire signs definitely usually are beautiful energy. So I absolutely love it. So before we actually get started talking about your story, I would love for you to tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Well, I actually have two things I'm grateful for. And the first one is getting to meet you today. This is so much fun to get to know another person that's living on this planet we call rock, the rock, Earth. And then number two, I'm grateful for another day of life, because, there's so many people that didn't wake up this morning. And there's so many people that are so discouraged because they couldn't get up and get going. So I'm grateful for another day of life. And I'm so grateful for the energy I have to not only help myself, but to help other people realize there is hope.
Yay. I thank you so much for that. I'm so grateful to meet you as well today. Like, this is definitely a beautiful moment because this is our first moment of meeting each other, and we won't ever have this moment again. It won't ever be a first of this again. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
I love it, love it, love it.
And cherish
So
every moment. That's why I was excited to meet you. And you have a beautiful name. I love your name.
thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. And my mother, I'm sure, is listening. So she was the one that named me. So
Hi,
the
Mom.
compliment yes, will definitely extend out to her. So thank you. So you're here because of your story and what you have to say. And I love when you sent me a message, and I love that you said from bitter to better. Like, I love that. You went from being bitter to better. So tell me your story on how you went from bitter to better.
When I was 17 years old, I was lying in a hospital bed fighting for my life. I was in ICU, and you hear those scary sounds, and I'm thinking, what in the world is wrong with me? And a doctor walks in, he puts his hands on his hips, and he says, "Young lady, you've got juvenile diabetes." Now it's called type 1. And he said, "You're going to die with horrible complications. You're going to go blind. You're going to have your legs amputated. You'll be on dialysis." He went on and on and on. And he said, "Oh, and you're never going to be able to have any children." And he turned around and he started walking away. And he said, "Oh, by the way, you're going to have to take several shots a day for the rest of your life because there isn't a cure." And he walked out. And I'm sitting there thinking, what did he just say? Excuse me? And I was, number one, I was in shock. And
Mhm.
number two, I kept thinking, did I hear him right? So I looked to the nurse and she's like, "Yes, that's your diagnosis." And I'm thinking, okay. And I thought, I'm 17 years old. I was a senior in high school, and I'm looking forward to going to college, raising a family, having all the experiences that everybody assumes is going to happen to them at the age of 17. And I realized when he walked out of the room, the doctor, I thought I had no hope. And I
Mm.
thought, wait a minute, Tracy, you got to have hope because without hope, we have nothing. And so the 2.5 weeks I was in the hospital, learning to give myself a shot, learning what I could or couldn't eat. And
Mm.
mostly, it's back then, it's what you couldn't eat. And I started hearing the same thing from every person I went to in the medical community, in the hospital. They all kept saying the same thing. You're going to be dead in 20 years. You're going to die with horrible complications. And the list went on and on. And I'm just by this time, I'm a depressed person. I mean, I was an athlete in high school. I was an athlete before high school. I was pretty optimistic my whole life. And this thing started wearing me down. And I kept thinking, wait a minute, Tracy, this is not right. And so I got home and I was so depressed, not like anything anybody in my family or my friends had ever seen. And we were going on our first outing as with my friends, like you do in high school, and we were going to go see a movie. And I walked into the movie theater, and all my friends were ordering the popcorn, the soft drinks, the candy and everything else. And it was my turn. And I walked up and I asked for just a small cup so I could get a drink of water out of the drinking fountain. And the
Mhm.
concession stand clerk looked at me like I was crazy. And this was way before bottled water. This was way before diet soft drinks. I mean, this was that long ago. And she said no. And all of a sudden, at that moment, the 3 months I'd been since I'd been diagnosed, and all the depression, the anxiety, I ran out of the movie theater screaming, crying, why me? Why me? I have all these plans. Why is this happening to me? I'm driving home and I'm sobbing. And I got home and my mom knew something was wrong. And I just kind of put my hand up. Hey, I can't talk about it. And I went upstairs and I got in bed, still sobbing, feeling defeated. And all of a sudden, as a 17-year-old kid, it hit me just like this. I said, Tracy, you have two choices. You can be better or you can be bitter. What are you going to choose? And at that moment, at 17 years old, I knew my life, I'm going to be better. And so every day I strive to do the right things and be better and not bitter over anything. And that mindset really started changing my life. And then, as about a couple of weeks, month after that, I started going into a medical school library and I started researching at the college. They all knew I was in high school, but they were cool to let me go in and start researching because, again, we didn't have the internet back then. And I started realizing there's things I could be doing, Tracy, that's not different than what the doctors and all the medical team was telling me, but things I could start doing to help me live a longer, healthier life. And so I started implementing those, and then my life just started transforming. And every day I wake up, like I said, I'm happy for another day of life because we're not guaranteed anything. And what's interesting to me is when I speak in front of like physicians or hospitals or I'm talking to them, the first thing they always ask me is, how are you still alive? And what are you doing? And so then I start telling them my strategies of what I'm doing because it's not unheard of to live this long, 47 years now of living with type 1 diabetes. And I'm not going to get into diabetes, but very few of us have type 1 diabetes. The majority of people that you hear have diabetes, that's the type 2 that's often you can handle with lifestyle changes, eating right, exercising, and sometimes medication. Most of the time, you can handle it with diet and exercise, unless you have something, that you need a little extra help. But with type 1 diabetes, you instantly start taking shots. And without insulin, you die. And so I started realizing more and more of what I could do. And that's why I know I'm still alive, thank you, Lord. But also, I'm also healthy and I have no complications. And all the people said you'll never have children. Well, I have two healthy kids and I have six grandkids, which is amazing for me.
Amazing, amazing. You know, it was so beautiful that you decided to make this choice so young. A
Mhm.
lot of people, sometimes it takes a long journey for them to get to that place of saying no more. But you was able at 17 years old to be able to say, oh no, I'm not going to accept what everyone else has to say. And not hand my power over to them. It's so many times throughout life, so many people hand their power to the doctors, they hand their
Mhm.
power over to their teachers or their parents, they hand their power over to so many other people that's outside of them just because they spoke from their belief systems.
Mhm.
And you show that you choosing to speak from your belief system and push in the direction that you wanted to go, you got to create your own reality instead of living in the reality that someone was trying to build for you.
That's exactly
So
right.
this is so powerful to listen to because so many of us can take notes from this, no matter what age or what
Mhm.
circumstances we are in life. And so what if we have lived most of our life with accepting the what others have told us that is going to be our life. Listening to stories like this allows us to understand like we do have our own power, that
Mhm.
you did say at the very beginning that it's in your mind. And I've had quite a
Mhm.
few podcasts come on this, I've quite a few podcast episodes where guests came on and really explained. Just recently, a few weeks ago, I had an episode about biohacking the mind. And
Mhm.
biohacking the mind, the guest said that it's got to start with up in here with your
Mhm.
belief system. It was the same thing. Someone had
Yeah.
gave one of his patients the diagnosis that that they had 3 days to live, and he said, well, what do you believe, what do you want? And he
Mhm.
helped the man reshift his mindset. So mindset is it, that's where it starts. It
And
starts
that's so
really
right.
young.
That my 3M formula, which I discovered actually by happenstance when I wrote my first book, is 3 M's: mind, mouth, and move. You have to have the right mindset, just like you were saying.
Mhm.
And mouth, we have to learn to eat, not live to eat. I mean, we have to learn to eat, not love, wanting to eat all the time and everything. And then number three, move. We have to get off our chairs and move more. And with those 3 M's, your life can change dramatically. And it goes back to choices. We have two choices. I could have said, I can't, but I chose to say, I can. And when we look at things with a choice perspective, it's the mindset, but we think, I can, I can. It's easier to do something. When you say, I can't, you're right. Either one of those choices are going to be right. Either you
Yeah.
don't do it or you do it. So that's kind of, following up on what you just mentioned.
Yeah, that is a quote out there that says exactly what you just said. Like, I can or I can't, whichever one
Mm-hmm.
it's true. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
one you choose,
Yeah.
it's the truth. So it's the power that you're putting into it. So go ahead, say, well, I can't climb those stairs or I can't do this. Guess what? You just said it, so now it's your truth. And if
Mm-hmm.
you change, your narrative, if you change your narrative just by the words you're speaking out your mouth, and saying, you know what, I can climb those flight of stairs. I can run that, 5K, or I can do this. Guess what? You can. But if you say
Yes,
you can't, you can't. Whichever one, it's your decision. So,
exactly.
yeah. So, amazing, amazing. And I absolutely love the title to your book. You said the 3 M's: mind, mouth, and move. So
Mm-hmm.
your mind, the mindset, your
Mm-hmm.
mouth, which you decide to put in your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a choice as well too. It's a hard choice because food is like a drug. So it may be
Mm-hmm.
easy to say lay off the cupcakes and stuff, but the desire just keeps coming there. So sometimes it is a little bit difficult. But if you start up in your mind, then you could, to be mindful of it, then it helps with the desires and the temptations of food, and moving your body and just being mindful to get up and move, even though we may not want to do that 30-minute, cardio. At the end, we always say, well, I feel good after I
Mm-hmm.
did it.
And that's why I have more energy in my 60s than I did in my 30s. My 30s, I didn't have this kind of energy. And
Mhm.
I guess I could just go and go and go, which is why I rode my bicycle from San Francisco to New York City a couple of years ago, because I do things where people say you can't do it. And I'm like, okay, I can do it. But that's every decade I do something huge to celebrate my diagnosis because, again, I choose to be better, not bitter. So every decade I do something. And as my 40th anniversary of my diabetes started approaching and my diagnosis, I thought, what can I do? And I thought, okay, I love to ride bikes. I'll ride my bicycle from the Golden Gate Bridge to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Wow.
And it was the best experience of my life. But so many people at the beginning told me the same thing. Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I started shifting my mind from listening to those negative, naysayers to saying, yes, I can. Yes, I can. Just like the little engine, I think I can. I think I can. Well, I knew I could. I just knew I could do it because I have that mindset. But also, I've been exercising my whole life. I do things, every year, something massive. But that was the biggest thing I've ever done is 3,527-mile bicycle ride. But
Wow.
because of that, though, I'd like to share this story because it's so impactful for so many people. And I was in Sacramento waiting for the red light to turn green so I could keep pedaling. And a lady just happened to say, oh, I wish I could ride my bicycle across the city. I said, well, actually, I'm riding my bicycle to New York City. And I just had that gut feeling, that gut feeling that I thought, I need to go talk to her. So I just got off my bicycle and I was sitting there talking to her at the bus stop. And she was telling me that I'm waiting for my brother to come pick me up because I can't walk home. She says it's about 4 blocks, 4 houses away. And I thought, she was the sweetest, loveliest young lady I've ever met, probably in her mid 30s, but she was morbidly obese. And she was so embarrassed. She was so embarrassed. And I kept saying, stop, you have a beautiful smile. Let's not go that direction. Let's go more positive. But
Mhm.
I started, the health coach in me started coming out and I started saying, can you do this? Can you do that? And she said, I can't. I can't. And
Mm.
I said, could you walk to your driveway? And just for a split second, she said, I think I can. And
Mm.
yes, that's what I needed. So I said, okay, walk to your driveway and rest, and then walk back. And then you're done for the day. And just continue to build on that. And then when you have more energy, go next door, walk back and forth. I mean, just simple little things. And then I
Yeah.
said, eventually walk to the stop sign, eventually catch a bus because she was so embarrassed waiting for her brother and
Mm.
putting everybody in her family out. Well, by the time I was riding my bicycle to New York City, I got a message from this sweet, darling lady. And she said, I have to tell you, I just signed up for my first 5K walk. This
Mm.
was a lady that couldn't walk 4 houses down. And
Mm.
of course, that's 3.1 miles for y'all that don't do a lot of 5K races. And
Yeah.
she said, I have to tell you, Tracy, I didn't even realize that how easy it was because I kept saying, I can't. My mind kept saying, you can't do that. You can't do that. She says, now I walk every day, rain, sleet. Well, they don't have sleet in, Sacramento, but rain and, wind and everything, hot weather. But she
Mhm.
said, what's even more impactful for me is I didn't even realize I was losing weight. I just knew I had more energy. And she said, my doctor is just like, this is incredible what you're doing. So it doesn't matter where you are. If you have to, you just have to get off the couch or get off your chair and just take a couple of steps and then go a little bit further. And if I'd have left San Francisco, well, the Golden Gate Bridge, and thought, I have 3,527 miles to get to the Brooklyn Bridge, I would have been overwhelmed. But every day I said, I'm going for a bike ride. And
Mm.
that's what life is all about, no matter what struggles people have. Don't think about it as I have to lose 150 pounds or whatever, or I have to lose 20. Just think about what can I do today to feel better? When you
Mm.
think about feeling better, having more energy, then you won't even think about all the negative stuff you have to do, which I don't think it's negative. I think eating bad food, like you mentioned cupcakes, those
Mm.
kind of things, it weighs people down so much because then it starts messing with your mindset. Because then you're like, oh, I'm tired or I'm worthless or those horrible things we say because we're programmed to not eat that kind of stuff. We just have to shift our mindset from thinking advertisers don't know what I need. And you
Mm.
start saying, what do I need? And then you start feeling better and you don't want to go back. When I have to eat, and I do eat a few pieces of like cupcakes and birthday cakes for grandkids' birthdays. But then I'm afterwards thinking, ooh, why did I do that? It's just, I feel horrible.
Yeah, I absolutely love that story about that young woman. And
Mhm.
when you were saying the story, I like to talk about micro goals, and you gave her the micro goal of just walking to her driveway, and that's what it's about with life as well too. Don't
Mm.
necessarily look like, if you're looking to be have $1 million in your bank and you are negative $12 in your bank right now, don't think about the $1 million. Think about, can I get to a positive? Can I get to $50 this week? Think about things in small increments.
Mhm.
Of doing it. And then you're going to feel so good within yourself, because if you're constantly reaching to do, run a marathon every day, you're going to be disappointed every day. But if you say, I'm going to run 1 mile today, you're going to feel so good and so achieved at the end of that run. You'll be like, oh my God, I did it. I accomplished my goal. And then once that goal starts to get a little bit comfortable, then you say, okay, I'm going to kick it up a notch. I'm going to add more onto it. So the importance of that. And then on top, the importance of understanding the value of a micro goal, how that's going to move you forward much faster than setting the big goal.
Yep.
And then on top of that, you were saying that, her mindset, like she, just everything was, I can't. She had the running, I can't, without even trying, I can't.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the mindfulness of that too, and then we may have to sit back and analyze with ourselves and be like, how is, am I saying I can't to everything? Because I believe I was in that spot, just a few years back, not
Mhm.
thinking, it was possible, like, oh, I can't, that's not for me. Or I think that was more of me. Oh, that's not for me.
Mhm.
For not even thinking to try, because I'm just saying I can't do it. So I'm saying,
Mhm.
oh, that's not for me. So
Mhm.
being mindful. And so we may not always say I can't. But we may need to figure out what is our vocabulary around that, of stopping us from moving forward. And do we want to expand within our lives? Because if we want to expand, we have to go back and see what the running, language is happening. And if, someone, you're 40 something, 50 something, 30 something, or 20 something listening to this has been the running conversation in your mind for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's not always, you don't even notice it anymore, because that's the normal conversation. So just listening to this type of information and saying, oh, wait a minute, am I doing this? Do I need to be mindful of this? And don't beat yourself up. Like you say, you don't beat yourself up.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, just bringing awareness to it matters. And then once you can bring the awareness, then you can start to make those subtle changes.
Mhm.
Walking to the driveway, walking
Mhm.
to the corner, and so on. So
It's
amazing, amazing, amazing. And I think it's a conversation that's well needed, because, even if we are like, you may be like, oh, hey, my story, I'm not overweight, I'm not this, I'm not that. But yet you may be in a place that you're stuck, and you
Mhm.
just can't figure out why you're stuck, even though you still have all of the checkpoints in life. What
Mhm.
do you need? What's the language, or what do you need to change within your life to feel not stuck anymore?
Exactly.
By this. And upon you having this, story, you kind of just brushed upon it. But you
Mhm.
definitely, gonna have to share this with us, this 3,200, no, 3,527 mile, bike ride you had. We got to go through this, but definitely give us your input, and we got to go through, how did this even happen? Like, people are like, how you gonna ride a bike that far? Like, all the questions are probably running through people's mind, like, how did this happen? Like, what's the story behind this? So go ahead, tell us what you need to say, and we got to touch on that story.
Okay. Well, like I was mentioning earlier, I always do something every decade since my diagnosis, when I started realizing, okay, what am I going to celebrate? Celebrating my diabetes diagnosis, because again, I choose to be better, not bitter. And so my 10th anniversary of my diagnosis, so I'd been 27. I didn't do anything. I didn't even celebrate. I didn't even think about it. But I was still going to be alive anyway, because they told me you're going to live about 20 years. And then about my mid 30s, is when I started realizing, oh, Tracy, you're going to have to really get your medical researching hat back on and get back to the university, get back into, now we had the internet. No, we didn't have the internet then. Anyway, then I was still going in and doing medical research there. But I started changing what I was eating, changing my exercise routine, changing so many things, but mostly my mindset. You're going to hear me go back and forth to my mindset. So then I signed up to do a 100-mile bicycle ride. Yeah, that was easy, but I wanted to do something to celebrate. And then as my 30th anniversary of my diagnosis came around, I did a triathlon. Even though I'm afraid of water, but I do something every year that I'm afraid of. Just I've always been that way. Eleanor Roosevelt's one of my heroes, and she always said, do something every day that frightens you. So I try to do something at least once a year that frightens me. And then as my 40th anniversary started coming along, I was walking one day and I wasn't listening to any music. I wasn't listening to a book because normally when I walk or run, I listen to books or radio, but it was quiet. And I was in my thoughts and I thought, what am I going to do? And just like you and I are talking, it just hit me. Okay, go across the country. All right, I'll ride my bicycle across the country. And so I'm actually scared to tell my husband because I thought he was thinking I'm crazy, even though he's the greatest man ever. But took me like 2 weeks to get the nerve up to tell him. He's like, oh yeah, go for it. That'd be great. But I was having lunch with my daughter and I was really scared. She's the youngest. I was really scared to tell her, not scared, that doesn't sound right, but I was nervous because I didn't want her to worry because my kids grew up seeing some really bad things happening in my life with my diabetes. And because it's a very difficult disease to control. And so I told her, and she's like, oh, Mom, I love it. Just think of all the people you're going to be inspiring, the kids and everything. But she said, you got to have a starting point and you need an ending point. And she said, I got it, bridge to bridge. Start the Golden Gate Bridge because everybody in the world knows the Golden Gate Bridge, and finish at the Brooklyn Bridge because everybody in the world knows the Brooklyn Bridge. And
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, that's brilliant. So I, started writing every day. And then by the time I got to Chicago, I got a voice message from one of Dr. Oz's TV producers. And she said, we are hearing about your story and we want to have you finish on the show. And I said, okay, that'd be great. So anyway, I finished at the Brooklyn Bridge and then rode back into Manhattan and I finished on the Dr. Oz show. So that was fun. But,
Amazing.
when I left, I was feeling down because I kept thinking everybody in the world is bad. I was hearing so much negative things in the news, people I was talking to. And what the biggest change for me on that bicycle ride was I started realizing there's so many great people in this world. And people would stop and they'd bring me something to eat. And they would stop and give me water. People cheering when I was riding up these humongous hills, and people, cheering, rolling their windows down, honking their horns. You've got this. You've got this. And throughout the whole entire ride, I was meeting people that I never would have met. I was talking to people. Hopefully, well, I know I was inspiring some people, but more importantly than that, I was able to start a foundation to help children that wasn't even thought of before my bicycle ride. And so many places I went. Was I scared? Absolutely, 100% on several occasions. But, I didn't stop. I kept going and kept pedaling, just like we talked about. Every day, I'd get a little bit further, inch by inch. But maybe the fourth or fifth day of my ride, I got a message from a lady who said, my daughter also has type 1 diabetes. She's 6 years old. She's had it for 2 years and she's already given up hope on life. And I said, ooh, okay. First of all, I'm thinking that's not good. But she said, I took her out and bought her a map of the United States. She cut out a bicycle and cut out a picture of your head. And she used that little bicycle every day to inch you closer to New York City. And I thought the days that I did get discouraged, well, there were some because I was exhausted on several times. I would think of that sweet little girl. And I think if she can continue to fight for diabetes, I can easily do this.
Wow. Okay. I'm sure you can write a book on just this.
And I did.
Oh,
I
you did?
did.
Okay.
Right for hope. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, how long did this take?
It took me 3 months. I could have easily done it in 6 weeks.
Mm,
But the reason it took me 3 months is I had a lot of TV appearances along the way. I had
mm,
already been on multiple TV shows for my first book, but
mm.
then the producers, they wanted to get me back on. So I had to work my schedule around their schedule. But then I also did a lot of speaking. did a lot of camps, spoke at a lot of hospitals. People had events for me throughout the ride because I'm very competitive. And I wanted to say, oh, I did it in 6 weeks. But the more I
Yeah.
started thinking about it, I thought, Tracy, this is to inspire people. This is to provide hope because I didn't have the hope at that time, 40 years ago. And I thought, what can I do to provide hope? So on purpose, I slowed my trip down to make sure I could get as much activity along the way so I could make sure that people were, it wasn't just for me. It started out for me, but
Yeah.
it ended up being nothing about me and celebrating. It was about helping people have hope. People that I met that were older. They were saying, well, I couldn't do that. And they were actually younger than I was.
Yeah.
At that time, I had 3 grandchildren alive and they were kind of young, but now they're so excited when they watch videos of me and stuff like that because they're like, "Man, that's my grandma," and stuff like that. So it's also to build a legacy for my family, but most importantly, I want to inspire people because I want to come across people that didn't have hope and encourage them to, no matter what, we have 2 choices. You can have hope, or you can be hopeless. You can say, I can't, you can say, I can. You can be
Mm.
better, you can be bitter. So I was always about talking to people when I would stop or they would stop me, and just kind of give them a little background of why I was doing it, but most importantly, of the people that I met. One man, I have to tell you, he's a Hall of Fame skier. I didn't know that at the time. And he stopped because I had a flat tire. And not only did he come and he gave me he fixed my flat tire, which was so nice, gave me some food, but he also gave me a couple of extra supplies that if he hadn't stopped, I would have been without my supplies because this was a long journey and quite a bit of Nevada and quite a bit of Wyoming. I didn't see anybody. I mean, it was, pretty not populated areas where I was riding.
Oh, wow. So how did people know about this? Did you have like a Facebook group? Like, how were people knowing that you were on this journey and being able to follow you and cheer you along, knowing that, oh, that's the woman, you know, going this race, like not race,
Yes.
like,
Well,
how did they know?
well, first of all, I I did have social media, yes. And I wasn't going to do anything because I thought, I don't know anything about that much about social media then. But my daughter says, do Facebook Lives every day and every night. When you start off, do a Facebook Live, tell them what you're going to do, what you're hoping to accomplish. And then at the end, and that's how it really took off because I would sing, I would do crazy things in the morning. When I get done, I'd say, I'm so tired, I can't even talk. Oh, I heard the funniest joke today from somebody. And then I tell them a joke. And so,
Yeah.
it kind of, because I have to be me, I can't just be exhausted all the time. And so
Yeah.
that's where it really took off. But then also, my first TV appearance was in Sacramento. And the more TV got going on it, the more people were able to see more things. And then one day, the night after I was in Sacramento, I was camping, and a lady stopped by, and she said, "Did I just see you on whatever the show was, Good Morning Sacramento, whatever?" And I
Mhm.
said, "Yes." And she said, "I gotta go tell my husband." So they came over. I mean, so the
Yeah.
more in places I stopped, the more I had my bicycle shirt on and talking about what my goal was and everything. So it became more, I think probably the growth was the biggest for TV and radio and newspapers, but the Facebook is what really got people interested. One day I was late checking in because I always say, I'm going to try to go this far and we'll see. And then by the time I finished, I was like an hour and a half, 2 hours later than what most people thought. And my phone was just going off saying, "Are you okay? What's going on? You're not reporting to us."
Oh, so you had a fan club, a
Yeah.
following. Like, okay, I'm here for it. Amazing. So, did I hear you say you was camping? Like you stopped to camp? How did you stop in between every night? Were you camping or were you going like knew you were checking into the nearest hotel?
I think the whole time, 3 hotels, I think, yes.
Oh, only three hotels?
Yes, except in New York. Well, New York City, I stayed. Yeah, anyway,
No
Chicago, I
camping in
did.
New York, but
There's no camp. I did camp in New Jersey the day before, though, right across the street from the Statue of Liberty. There's a campsite, and I did camp there. That was hilarious. But what we did was, my husband's very wise. I started telling him about all this, and he's like, "Okay, okay, that makes sense." But he said, "How are you going to keep your insulin cold?" Well, without insulin, I die. And I thought, hadn't thought of that. So what he did was we went out and we bought an RV, a recreational vehicle. And
Mhm.
then he and I drove out there together in the RV. And then
Okay.
every night or every day we'd meet for lunch, and he'd say, how far do you think you can go? Where are you going to stay? So then he'd say, I got a campsite here, campsite there. We stayed in Walmart's parking lots often. They would let us stay there. More and more places were excited, roadside parks in Wyoming, because every 76 miles is a rest stop. You're going 76 miles to get to a rest stop. So I only rode 76 miles each day in Wyoming because that's where we spent the night. So it was easier because of the RV, but actually it would have been easier for me just to have ridden my bicycle like I had planned and just carry a tent on my bike and my sleeping bag. But because of my insulin, I have to live. So that's why we did that.
Okay, thank you for saying the RV, because when you first said camping, I was imagining a tent and stuff. I'm like, how's she carrying? Like, then she, on top of riding the bike, she has to carry all this weight as well too, of carrying all your supplies and stuff like that. So,
Which is
okay,
what I was going to do, except that
yeah,
my
yeah.
wise husband said, nope, nope.
Yeah, because that definitely, yeah, that's challenging. With a backpack of like 3 months of clothes, not 3 months, but
Yeah.
you would stop and wash and all that type of stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
oh my goodness, this would have to do a lot of planning. I feel like I would be navigating in different directions. So you already had the map going, and you knew I needed to stay on this course. Like that was a lot of planning to understand, because you're going on different parts of the states where you don't know, you're not familiar. I'm assuming these are pieces of land you've never stepped foot on before, and you had to figure all of this out.
Correct. And where it's amazing I'm still alive because I got lost throughout the entire ride. I can get lost pulling out of my driveway, going places. I've been that way my whole life. My kids used to say, are we lost yet? About 5 minutes into the car. So, I mean, it's always been a joke. Everybody says she's going to be lost. But what ended up happening, yes, I had GPS and I kept track of that. But one day I was leaving I was leaving Trunky, California, heading to Reno, Nevada. And it was always supposed to be a 3 hour bike ride, the old Gilligan's Island 3 hour tour. It
Yeah.
was always supposed to be 3 hours. So I carried less water, I carried less food, I carried less everything.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, about 3 hours, I'm looking at my watch and I'm thinking, I don't see Reno at all. And all I see is dirt roads and a mountain right ahead of me. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, what do I do? So I kept going, finally had to put my bike on my shoulder, and I'm carrying my bicycle over huge boulders. I mean, we're talking huge boulders, and I'm climbing, never saw a person. But
Mm-hmm.
just before I left this little bitty town, the lady warned me, be careful, the bears are active today. And I thought, and here I'm thinking, there's probably bears everywhere. And I had no idea what to do. I just kept going again with my gut instinct. And I kept going, climbing, 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 because I had no cell service. As soon as
Mm-hmm.
I got cell service, I called my husband and I said, where are you? And he said, I'm at the campsite in Reno. Where are you? And I said, I don't even see Reno. And he's like, okay, let me, track where you are. So he tracked me and he said, you're on the wrong side of the mountain. And I thought, okay, I'm going to keep going. And I had, again, two choices. You're going to you hear me say that all the time, and you're going to continue. Okay, Tracy, what are your two choices? I could give up. The
Mm-hmm.
ride would be over, but I would be safe and, call the park ranger while I had cell service, or I could go down the hill and start riding on that road again. And obviously, I got to carry my bicycle down the other side of the hill with huge boulders, sliding, falling, everything. I looked like I'd been in a war zone by the time I got finished. But then I ended at the bottom of the mountain. And then there was a volunteer fireman waiting for me because Fred had met my husband, had, talked to him at a coffee shop and said, oh, we'll get over there. And then they showed me exactly where to go. I mean, people are so amazing. So I
Mm-hmm.
was able to keep riding. But, I got lost and everywhere I went. I can't think of a city I did get lost in. But my concern, I was really afraid of riding into Chicago, and I was really afraid of riding into New York City because these are huge, huge, huge cities. And I'm thinking, of course, I had been as a tourist to Chicago and to New York City, but never on a bicycle. And I kept thinking, okay, Tracy, you got to get over this fear. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Well, by the time I got into Chicago, I was less fearful. And then by the time I got into New York City, I thought, this is nothing. By this time, I've already ridden 3,500 miles. I've only got a few more miles left. I can do it. And so I would have to positively enforce think, 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 think right. Don't think wrong. Don't say I can't. Say, okay, I can do this. I can do it. I just stay steady on my bicycle.
I love it. I love it. So with writing every day, did you have like mile goals, like I'm gonna do 110 miles each day, or did you have, oh, I'm gonna ride my bike for 3 hours every day, or was you like, I just need to get from this location to this location by today? What was your goals with like each city? Because I know you had to have some type of like plan.
Mhm. Yes, I did. Mostly, for example, it was right outside of Sacramento, like maybe day 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly, but it was 118
Oh yeah,
degrees.
that's where you
I was
at.
taking my feet off the bike and it felt like it was horribly hot. I thought my shoes were going to melt. And so I called my husband after a few more minutes and I thought, okay, Tracy, yeah, I don't remember what my destination was, but I thought this is suicide if you keep going. It was so
Mhm.
hot and I was
Yeah,
so dehydrated, even though I was drinking gallons of water. And so I
yeah.
called him. He picked me up. He marked my spot. I marked my spot on my GPS so I could come back. And I
Mhm.
thought, okay, I'm not even going to miss a half a mile of this bike ride. So he came back to the next spot the next day, and I was perfectly fine. So I could keep riding. So it was more on, again, back to my guts. I was going more on gut instinct. And then when I would get a message from a TV producer or a radio show or a newspaper, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I can make that. And then one day in Iowa, I was riding. I'd been away for probably on my bicycle, probably an hour and a half, maybe. And I got a phone call and they said, oh, could you go back and meet us? Because we'd like to meet you back where you spent the night. We stayed in a casino parking lot. They had an RV park, which I thought was funny. And I
Mhm.
said, yes. And he said, can you be there in an hour? And I said, yes. So I really rode fast there because, again, my mission was to provide hope for others by this time. So
Mhm.
I zoomed all the way back, which then slowed my progress down for the next day. And
Okay.
then when Dr. Oz's producer called and said, we've got to get you on, we want to have you on a taping, finishing on the ride in our studio, then I had to slow way down because I felt like that was a powerful message to tell people that, hey, if this old lady can do it, what's stopping you from doing things? And so because of that, then I slowed way down. So I went through Pennsylvania, I went through New Jersey at almost a turtle speed, but I finished it, obviously.
Oh, okay, because Dr. Oz gave you a particular date.
Yes,
He
yes.
wanted you there. So that means you had, if you would have just stayed on your own trajectory, you would have been in New York City much faster.
Correct. I could easily originally planning on doing it in 6 weeks,
Okay.
easily, because I could have done that. But anyway, it was much better experience this way, so much better. But I just, I'm so shocked at how many people say you can't do things. And my my husband and I, again, we're in our mid 60s, and a few months ago we backpacked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, carrying our
Mm-hmm.
backpacks, carrying our food, carrying our water, carrying our clothes, our sleeping bag, our tent, and everything. That's a 10-mile straight down shot to hike
Okay.
down.
Okay.
And we did it in our 40s, we did in our 50s, and we did in our 60s.
Mm-hmm.
But our 40s was very easy. Our 50s it was really easy. But our 60s, we started realizing, what? We're going a little slower than usual that we've done the other two
Mm-hmm.
times. But we thought, hey, who cares? So it's not a speed. When you get in your 60s, it's like, I can do anything. I just have to maybe go a little slower.
Yeah.
My kids and grandkids still want to race me running. They still think that's fun. And
Yeah.
okay, can't beat my kids any longer, but some of my grandkids I can still beat. But those, it's the people that are older, that like a group of friends of ours that we get together with them every once in a while, and they all sit around and complaining their aches and pains and things like that. And we always leave when we're done with them. We're saying, no, we can't have that stinking thinking because,
Yeah.
yeah, we're slower, and I'm going to do another cross country bike ride rather soon. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, am I going to compete against, you know, 3 years ago, 5 years ago? No, I'm just going to get on my bicycle and ride every day. And that's what life is all about. So don't compare yourself to me. Don't compare yourself to your sisters, your friends, your husband, your wife. Get out and do things that you like to do. And don't worry about beating yourself up for not having the perfect time, but just go out and walk around the block, enjoy nature, replace a cupcake or donut for an apple or blueberries or something else. And you'll start seeing noticeable changes rather quickly. And again, it's like micro goals. I mean, it's so easy to do, but people are just overwhelmed by thinking, I can't. And it's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah, yeah, I like that you said that. Oh, we got to get away from that stinking thinking.
That's a
I,
Texan in me coming out.
I absolutely love that. And yeah, and it's just going back to the first story you told about that young woman in Sacramento
Mhm.
and how you spoke to her, and your goal at this moment in your life was to ride your bike across country, but her goal, you told her, don't, make your goal just get to your driveway, to the front of your driveway. And
Mhm.
that's what we have to remember in life. We may look at someone else and be so inspired. And yes, we should be inspired by someone else, but we don't have to try to walk in that person's shoes. It's
Mhm.
okay to find out which shoes do we need to walk into, just as that woman, her goal was to walk in the shoes of getting to her driveway. And then a few months later, she's able to go ahead and do a 3K, not 5K walk, So that was amazing for her. She may
Mhm.
not make it to the day of, her goal may not be to ride the bike across country, but this, just her doing this 5K is probably equal to what you just did. You know what I mean?
Right.
In
Oh,
her life.
more so. I think hers was more impactful than what I did.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100% from where she started to where she finished and continues today to keep that journey going. Oh yeah, her story is much more inspiring than mine.
Yeah. So, for the people that are visually watching this podcast and not listening, you have three books sitting behind you. Are you're the author of three books, or are there more?
No, just three.
Three.
Listen to me, just three. And
Yes.
my first book, my first book, Diabetes Tragedy to Triumph, my doctor actually wanted me. He kept suggesting I write this book because he kept saying, you've got to get this book into people's hands. And I then instantly said, oh, I can't. Think of the mindset again. I
Yeah.
can't. Well, I was a dyslexic kid in school. I was a kid that always went to the dumb and stupid classes because I couldn't read or write very well. And I thought, Tracy, that's stinking thinking. Let's go back and then I was very blessed because it became an international bestseller.
Wow.
And so, but it's because doctors were buying it because I speak in layman's terms, but I also have good research in there, just like all my books. I do a lot of research. I don't believe in snake oil salespeople. Take a pill and your life is going to get better because that doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Do something every day to get healthier because longevity is the goal. It's not losing weight. It's not being more energetic tomorrow. It's the longevity goal is, hey, I want to live longer. I want to be healthier. I want to be happier in my 80s and 90s than I even am in my 60s.
Exactly. Okay. So your first book was Diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
Tragedy and Triumph.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Tragedy to triumph. Tragedy
Tragedy to
to
Triumph.
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 Because going from here, from a negative to a positive.
Okay.
See
And
my
who,
mindset?
yes. And so who would that book be for? Like, if a person doesn't have diabetes, are they reading this book? Like, who is this book for?
It's people obviously with type 2 diabetes, more so than even the kind I have, type 1 diabetes, people with prediabetes. That's really important for people with prediabetes. And now, because of the epidemic rise in diabetes, and they're discovering that even people that without diabetes, they're discovering that their blood sugars are continuing to increase decade after decade because, again, of the toxic food we're eating and sitting on the couch and watching streaming shows instead of
Yeah.
getting out and go for a walk. And unfortunately, people are waiting until they get the diagnosis. So
Mm.
this book is for people that don't want that horrific diagnosis. And it's just people, a lot of people bought it. I spoke at a heart association event and I sold out. It was the first time I'd ever sold out of all my books. And I told the event planner, I said, this is diabetes, it's not heart. And she said, every single thing you said is for people with heart disease. And
Mm.
then the cancer people are telling me the same thing. So basically, it's how you want to live a longer, healthier life. This is just focused on diabetes, but the same thing applies for heart, Alzheimer's, dementia, heart cancer, all of them. And I didn't realize that when I wrote it until after that event planner without any medical degree was telling me about it.
Okay, I love it. And then, so what was your second book? Was that the three M's, or what was the
Well,
second?
my 3M came in it's a diabetes tragedy triumph. It's in the 3M formula is in that one.
Oh,
It
okay.
wasn't a book.
Three M's is in the.
It came from writing the book, and I started thinking, huh, I didn't realize that's what did it for me. When people ask you how you're alive now, I could say by 3M formula. But when
Mhm.
I wrote my book, it's kind of when you write it, you're on the computer all day typing and you're
Yeah.
thinking, oh, that does make sense. My second book was Ride for Hope, which chronicles my 3,527-mile bike ride across the country.
Mm.
And I'm shocked at the people that love this book because people are like, I feel like I'm riding my bike with you. And so that was a great joy. And then my last book is Longevity Codes. And I actually wrote it with my husband, believe it or not. And it's mostly science based, but it talks in layman's terms. But the reason why I'm so thrilled that my husband co authored it with me is because about 20 years ago, he was overweight. He was on 3 different prescriptions for problems with his medical stuff. And then now he's lost the weight. He's off all medication and he has been for like 15, 10 years, 12 years, something like that. And
Mhm.
so he's finally, you can't, as much as I love my husband, you can't force them to make changes, even though it's for their own good. You know that feeling. I
Yeah.
mean, somebody you love and you're like, don't do that, don't do that. My mom was a smoker my whole life. And even though I pray, please, please pleaded with her, quit smoking, she never did, but you got to kind of let go and let people do their own decisions. But my husband, one day he finally said, I need help. I was
Mm.
like, yes. So then he started making small changes. And then he started doing his own research. And I'd send him articles and then he'd research it and research it. So we did it was a challenge to write it together, but it turned out really nice. And that's for people that want to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. Very little about diabetes, a lot about, the mitochondria. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but a lot of things about the cells, the mitochondria, things that are important that we don't really talk about even
Mm.
when you go to the doctor, things like that. Supplements you can take, the right kind of diets, the right kind of exercise, and things like that.
Okay. Oh, thank you for sharing your art with us. Your true arts, and it's so beautiful. It's like you literally, like, all of these books were written from your journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like which you went through from the diabetes to doing the ride and now the longevity codes, with understanding the codes to helping us live longer by understanding what's going on within our body and how to apply our understandings to help us live longer and so on. So it's like this is a reminder that, all of our lives are a journey and that it's a story within all of it. So thank you for going ahead and sharing your stories through your life's journeys. Amazing. This has been such a beautiful episode. It's very uplifting and bright and has a lot of hope to it. So I like that you also started off with talking about having hope. If you don't have hope, you have nothing. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something about what you said.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I feel like everyone listening to this is going to leave listening with feeling hopeful with things, and understanding, going right back again,
Mm-hmm.
it's up in here, it's up in the mind. So,
Mm-hmm.
and making the choice to be mindful, to go ahead and start to make the adjustments that we may need to make within our lives. And like you said, it's not snake oil, or
Mm-hmm.
and like you say snake oil, I say it's no magic blue pill.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
so there's, like I always say, there's no magic blue pill, but
Mm-hmm.
it starts with the mindfulness, and and
Mm-hmm.
all about, just like, I call the show Becoming Unique. It's not just because it's my name, but it's because I believe that we all have our unique individual journeys and we all should be unique individuals. So what may work for one may not work for the next, just as that
Mm-hmm.
Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
Two different stories, but two great stories at the same time between you and that woman. So much to recall from all of the things you said. But it was such an amazing conversation, and I thank you for that. But I can't let you leave yet because I have one more question for you. And the question is, what does becoming unique mean to you?
Defining aging. I don't want to be one of those people sitting on a rocking chair when I'm 80 years old or 90 years old and watching the world go by. That's old thinking. I want to be the person that does whatever crazy things, or just going for a walk, or playing in the park with my grandchildren or great grandchildren. That's what it's all about for me, is just, becoming unique, because so many people think I'm too old. I can't. And I'm like, no, you can. Just try changing your life. I mean, so that's what I want to be known for, is somebody that says, I can do it. I can grow old and I can do what I want to do. Somebody next door to me is not going to want to go backpack into the bottom of the Grand Canyon, but they may want to do a 5K walk, or they want to go hiking in we have beautiful hiking areas around here. Things like that. I want to inspire people as I age to keep aging well and to do things right, so you're happier and have more energy, because people are shocked the energy level I have.
Mhm.
I go and go and go. So I think that's why I'm so unique.
Yay. I absolutely love it. Yes. And the proof is in the pudding, we're talking about all of that you do, starting with the mindset and just showing that you can be in your 60s and do all that you do by just helping with the mindset and all the other tools that we need to put within our lives, which is the three M's: the mind, the mouth, and the move. Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to share anything else before we close out today's episode?
I tell you, if anybody would like to see just a short 3-minute recap of my bicycle ride across the country, it's just real quick. It's just little splits from the whole entire ride. You can find it on the front page of my website. It's tracyherbert.com. I offer lots of free resources to help people that want to make that step, walk to the end of their driveway and back. That's the kind of people I really am hoping to inspire, but not just inspire. You can have transformation, or you can have information, but you want transformation. I mean,
Yeah.
transformation is where it happens.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Thank you. You were amazing.
Thanks so much. It's been fun.
You're welcome.